London, 1978. A man collapses on a busy sidewalk clutching his thigh. There is no gunshot, no scream, and no visible struggle. Just a tiny, sharp prick from the tip of a passing umbrella. Within hours, Georgi Markov, a fierce critic of the Eastern regime, was drifting into a permanent silence. The assassin simply folded the umbrella and disappeared into the fog, leaving behind a medical mystery that would haunt investigators for decades. This was not a random tragedy. This was a signature, a chilling message sent from a world that officially did not exist.
He saw us.
Welcome to the Shadow War, a conflict where the weapons were whispers and the casualties were simply erased from the record. For nearly half a century, the planet was divided not just by iron curtains and concrete walls, but by an invisible front line. The tension of this era did not live in the silos of intercontinental missiles, but in the pockets of trench coats and the back rooms of nondescript embassies. While the public watched the news for signs of nuclear fallout, a different kind of radiation was spreading through the corridors of power, the radiation of absolute paranoia. To the KGB, the world was a vast hunting ground for secrets that could level the playing field. To the CIA, the mission was to look through the thick veil of the Soviet monolith and find the cracks before they were filled with concrete. It was a game of mirrors where you could never be sure if the person sitting across from you was a colleague, a traitor, or a ghost. In the early days, the advantage shifted like sand. The Eastern agencies excelled in the art of the human asset, the long-term play that involved planting seeds that would not bloom for decades. They looked for the disillusioned, the idealistic, and those with a hidden hunger for significance. They did not just buy information, they bought souls. The recruitment of high-level officials in the heart of Western intelligence proved that the most dangerous weapon was not a bomb, but a well-placed friend in a high office. These individuals operated in a state of perpetual duality, living one life in the light and another in the darkness, funneling thousands of classified documents across borders while sharing drinks with the very people they were undermining. The atmosphere in Washington and Moscow during these decades was one of stifling suspicion. Every failed operation, every lost agent, and every leaked memo triggered a frantic internal hunt. This was the era of the counterintelligence czars, men whose jobs were to find the rot within their own ranks. They operated on the assumption that the enemy was already inside. They analyzed every micro-expression, every unexplained bank deposit, and every late-night walk. In this environment, truth became a rare commodity. If an agent came forward with a breakthrough, was it genuine intelligence or a sophisticated plant designed to lead the agency into a trap? The term wilderness of mirrors became the standard definition for reality where nothing was as it seemed. The tools of the trade evolved from simple hidden cameras to sophisticated electronic eavesdropping that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Billions were poured into technological marvels, attempting to listen through glass, track movements from space, and intercept communications that were supposed to be unbreakable. In Berlin, a secret tunnel was dug deep under the heart of enemy territory to tap into subterranean cables. For months, the intelligence flowed like water, only for the builders to realize later that the other side might have known they were there the whole time, feeding them a steady diet of carefully crafted lies. It was a cycle of measure and countermeasure, a digital and analog chess match, where the board was the entire globe. But technology could only go so far. The heart of the conflict remained the wetwork, a cold euphemism for the most permanent solutions. When an individual became too much of a liability, or when their departure posed a catastrophic risk to national security, the shadows reached out. These incidents were rarely loud. They looked like sudden illnesses, unfortunate accidents, or disappearances that were never solved. The methods were as creative as they were terrifying. There were whispers of substances that left no trace in an autopsy, devices disguised as everyday objects, and psychological operations designed to push a target to the brink of their own sanity. The goal was not just to remove an opponent, but to do so in a way that left the survivors guessing. Defection was the ultimate betrayal and the ultimate prize. When a high-ranking officer decided to walk into a foreign embassy, they brought with them a treasure trove of names, locations, and codes. But even a defector was a double-edged sword. Was their flight to freedom sincere, or were they a dangle? A fake defector sent to sow discord and provide false leads. The debriefings lasted for years, conducted in safe houses tucked away in the countryside, where every word was scrutinized for the slightest inconsistency. Some defectors lived out their lives under new identities, forever looking over their shoulders, while others met fates that suggested the long arm of their former employers never truly let go. The year 1985 is often cited in hushed tones as the Year of the Spy. It was a period when the invisible wall seemed to crumble from within. A series of high-profile arrests revealed that the infiltration was deeper than anyone had dared to imagine. Moles had been operating at the highest levels of the CIA and the FBI for years, compromised not by ideology, but by the oldest motivations known to man: greed, ego, and resentment. One of the most notorious was Aldrich Ames, a man who traded the lives of his fellow officers for bags of cash left at dead drops in public parks. The damage was immeasurable, blowing the cover of dozens of assets and leaving the West blind at a critical juncture in the Cold War. Consider the life of a mole. It is a life of constant acting, where every smile is a calculation and every friendship is a potential tool for leverage. Ames, for example, lived a relatively ordinary life while simultaneously handing over the names of every Soviet agent working for the United States. He watched as his colleagues vanished, knowing exactly why their chairs were suddenly empty. The psychological toll of such a life is almost impossible to grasp. To be a successful operative, one had to become a master of the lie, living a fabricated existence so convincingly that the line between the mask and the face began to disappear. Many returned from the field unable to trust their own families, seeing hidden microphones in every light fixture and coded messages in the morning paper. As the geopolitical landscape began to shift in the late 1980s, the shadow war did not end. It simply evolved. The collapse of the old systems saw agencies undergo a transformation, rebranding themselves and adapting to a new world of fractured states and rising influences. The focus pivoted from a single monolithic enemy to 1,000 smaller, more elusive threats. But the DNA of the original conflict remained. The techniques perfected in the back alleys of Berlin and the drawing rooms of Vienna became the blueprint for modern espionage. The shadows simply moved from paper files to encrypted servers, and from physical umbrellas to lines of malicious code. One of the most chilling aspects of this history is the realization that we only know about the failures. We know about the spies who were caught, the operations that were botched, and the secrets that were eventually declassified. The true successes, the operations that went perfectly, the agents who were never discovered, and the secrets that changed the course of history without anyone noticing remain buried. These are the stories that will never be told, the ghosts that will never be laid to rest. The Shadow War was a conflict fought in the periphery of our vision, a constant low-frequency hum of danger that defined the modern world. The paranoia was not a side effect of the job. It was the job. They were guardians of secrets that could never be shared, carrying the weight of invisible wars into their graves. Looking back at the archives that have been opened, A pattern of calculated risks and cold-blooded pragmatism emerges. There were plans to use specialized gases to incapacitate entire buildings, schemes to manipulate foreign elections through forged documents, and experiments into the limits of human suggestibility. While many of these sound like the plots of fiction, the reality was often stranger and more disturbing. The sheer scale of the resources dedicated to deception highlights a terrifying truth. In the struggle for global dominance, the truth was often the first thing to be sacrificed. The legacy of this rivalry is not just found in history books, but in the very fabric of our contemporary reality. The suspicion that persists between East and West today is a direct descendant of the mistrust cultivated during those decades. The methods of active measures, the use of disinformation to destabilize an opponent's society, have been digitized and amplified by the internet. What started as a physical umbrella in London has become a viral narrative that can reach millions in seconds. The Shadow War never had a final peace treaty. It merely entered a new phase of existence. As we examine the fragments of this era, we are left with more questions than answers. How many of the accidents of the 20th century were actually planned? How many world leaders were influenced by whispers they thought were their own ideas? The battle between the most powerful intelligence agencies in history was a reminder that power is often most effective when it is unseen. It was a game where the pieces were human beings and the stakes were the survival of entire ideologies. In this world, there were no heroes, only survivors, and those who were left behind in the dark. The final chapters of this conflict are still being written in the modern day. Every time a whistleblower emerges or a cyber attack cripples a government agency, the echoes of the old Shadow War can be heard. The names of the agencies might change, and the technology might leap forward, but the fundamental nature of the struggle remains the same. It is a quest for the ultimate advantage, a desire to know the unknowable, and a willingness to operate in the gray areas where morality is a luxury that no one can afford. The story of this silent struggle is a descent into a world where the floor is always moving. It is a cautionary tale about the price of secrecy and the cost of eternal vigilance. As long as there are borders and as long as there is power to be gained, the shadows will continue to move. The umbrellas are still out there, the dead drops are still being filled, and the whispers are still being traded in the dark. We are living in the world they built, a world where the most important events are the ones we will never hear about, and where the most dangerous enemy is the one we never see coming. The archives may give us a glimpse into the mechanics of the machine, but they can never capture the true scale of the human cost. The Shadow War was a tragedy played out in the dark, a conflict of absolute conviction and absolute betrayal. It remains one of the most complex puzzles of the human experience, a reminder that underneath the surface of our daily lives, there is a different reality altogether, one where the light never reaches and the war never ends. This is the enduring mystery of the silent powers, a narrative that continues to haunt the corridors of history, reminding us that some secrets are meant to stay buried. Every unexplained bank failure, every sudden shift in political rhetoric, and every prominent figure who vanishes from the public eye invites the same question. Is it a coincidence or is it a move on a board we cannot see? The agents of the past may have retired, but their protégés have inherited a world where information is the most lethal currency. The umbrellas have been replaced by keystrokes, and the fog of London has been replaced by the encryption of the deep web. Yet, the sensation of being watched, the feeling that the truth is just out of reach, remains exactly the same. In the end, we are left to wonder about the silent victories and the invisible losses. The Shadow War was not just about stealing documents or intercepting cables. It was a battle for the very soul of the future. As we move forward into an age of even greater surveillance and even deeper secrets, we must ask ourselves, who is holding the umbrella now? The game never ended, it just got quieter. And in the silence of the modern world, the most dangerous thing you can do is assume that you are alone.